Good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock, 6:01 to be precise, and we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. We have participants online as well as here in the room, and we are recording the meeting so that we can post it to our YouTube channel for others who might not have been able to make the meeting. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Joanne Jensen. I am the general manager here at the Sudden Valley Community Association. Today's presenters are Diane Bruno, who is an administrative specialist on staff. Diane is in charge of form submissions for ACC and other projects. Also, meeting facilitation, communications, and scheduling for the Architectural Control Committee. Joel Carter is here presenting as well today. Joel is responsible for builder meetings and site inspections. And this evening, he'll be going over the basics in terms of what steps you have to go through when you have a new construction project or an exterior alteration. As I said, I'm the general manager, and my main role for architectural control is in the area of compliance. I'm here to answer questions for the committee when they come up against things that they need help with. But primarily, I'm the person who follows their direction and implements their decisions in the real world. We have a bunch of slides, and part of that is so that some of the information will be memorialized in the recording so that people can reference this. There are links on some of the slides to get you to other important documents if you have questions and need to have them answered. But mainly the idea is to introduce ourselves to you and to encourage you to reach out to us before and during a building project so that we can clarify any confusion and help you to have a smooth experience. The Architectural Control Committee, of course, is the element of our governance structure that builders interact with the most. They're the group that creates the policies and then implements the policies in terms of reviewing proposed projects. We have our current chair with us here tonight, Daniel Rodriguez. Patrick Zwolensky is a member of the committee, and there are 5 other members of the committee who are not participating tonight. Members are elected each year to serve 3-year terms. If there are not enough elected members, the board of directors goes ahead and appoints some. And importantly, the committee meets on the first and third Thursdays of each month. The purpose of the committee is pretty straightforward. They're here to make sure that unchecked development does not ruin the aesthetic integrity or the living conditions of both the natural and the built environments. So here in Sudden Valley, we care a lot about our trees, and we have a lot of rules and regulations about those trees. That's a very obvious part of our natural environment. Obviously, our built environment is what you guys are responsible for as builders. Those are the homes and public buildings that occupy this space as well. The ACC really is here to encourage architectural design that takes advantage of each individual site, to encourage maximum creativity, but also to make sure that we don't end up looking like some developments do where the houses are all cookie cutter. Importantly, the ACC is in place to protect individual property owners from the results of indiscriminate construction. And so as you go through the process, please remember that the ACC has discretion to approve or deny based not only on the stated guidelines, but also on the criteria that are involved in a particular site. And just because a variance was approved on some other site doesn't mean that a similar variance would be approved on the site that you're talking to them about at that time. Everything is decided on an individual basis, site by site. One of the most commonly asked questions about our rules and regulations here in Sudden Valley is, why do I need Sudden Valley's permission if I have a permit from Whatcom County? Nowhere else where I build do I need to get like this double approval. Well, the fact is that you're building inside of a homeowners association, and there are restrictive covenants attached to every deed for every property here in Sudden Valley. And those restrictive covenants require owners to obtain ACC approval before beginning construction. That's a requirement. It's not a nice to have. It's not a being a good citizen thing. It's a requirement, a legal requirement. And it's attached to the deed of each individual property. It's important to know that SVCA's requirements are in addition to those imposed by the county, and they may be more restrictive. It's our right as a homeowners association to govern our properties the way we see fit. So what are the architectural control policies? Well, there's a very long document online that you can access on suddenvalley.com under the Residence Resources tab. And we'll actually show you a screenshot a little bit later in this presentation, so you can see where that is. There's one change to the architectural control policies that was approved by the Board of Directors on May 9th and became effective immediately. And I'll go over that change in a minute. But other changes are being considered right now. Those changes were announced at the April 25th meeting. They're online, a draft of them. They're not final, they're just being considered. So if you want to read that draft, and give feedback on the restrictions or the new rules that are being proposed, now would be the time to do that before they are approved and made final. Those additional changes that are being considered will not become effective until January 1st of next year. And the idea behind that is that if we're going to change the way a house needs to be designed or sited on the lot, we need to give people time to accommodate those new changes. And of course, as always, variances can be requested. One of the biggest changes that has been approved by the board this year, and you all received a letter telling you about this change when it happened, was an update to the fees and fines schedule. SVCA is required to maintain a table showing all the fees and fines that have been approved by the board. And again, you can find that on suddenvalley.com under the Residence Resources tab. There's a difference between a fee and a fine. Fees are set prices that must be paid for goods and services. So that means the application fee for submitting a new construction request is not negotiable. It is what it is. Fines, on the other hand, are levied when there's proof of a violation of our policies or of the rules and regulations. Fines may be appealed, but fees may not be appealed. So if you think a fine has been levied inappropriately or unfairly, you can request that the board hear an appeal. There are very specific rules governing that process and a very specific way that you have to request an appeal hearing and then put forward your evidence to be presented to the appeals hearing committee. And you can find, again, all that information online. Here are the architectural control fees, and I've listed both the prior amount and the amount that was approved on April 11th and became effective on April 12th of this year. You can see that in many cases fines doubled, but that's not true of every case. Some important ones to note: the new construction fee previously was $3,500, and it's now $7,000. Highlighted in yellow at the bottom of the table, you can see that the first extension fee is $5,000. The second extension is $10,000, and a third and final extension is $20,000. Here are the fines, and I won't read all of them to you because that would take a long time, but you can see that there are significant increases. And I've had some questions about why the fees and the fines went up so much. And I would like to point you to the memo that I wrote and presented to the board on April 11th of this year, asking them to approve these fees. In that memo, I detail the history of some of the increases that we've had, but I also point out a couple of things that are really important. First thing I'd like to point out is that our goal is to not fine anyone, not to fine a single builder. Unfortunately, many of the folks building here in the valley do not make themselves aware of the special rules and regulations that cover building within an HOA. And because they're unaware of the requirements and their responsibilities, they fail to follow them, and then they are fined. So as an incentive to motivate people to learn what the rules and regulations are, the fees and fines have been increased. Another reason that the fees and fines were increased is that they hadn't been increased since 2016. And I'd like to share a couple of numbers with you. In 2016, the median price of a single family home in Washington state was $315,900. In 2022, which is the last year for which data are available, the price for that same single family home had risen to $647,900. That is more than 2 times the price that it was in 2016. The Association of Professional Builders estimates that in 2022, the average builder's margin was 24.8%, which led to a net margin of 12.73%. That means when a builder sells an average single-family home in Washington state, they net $82,478. It is very reasonable to me that if blocking a road without notice or cutting down an extra tree makes their job easier, the potential fine will not be a deterrent. Now that the fines are larger, we hope that they will be a deterrent. But more importantly, working with staff and with our ACC committee, there are usually compromises that can be found so that we don't have to involve the rules and regulations. We can figure out how to make the project go smoothly without invoking fees or fines. These slides just list out all of the different fines and fees before and after. This slide, I've highlighted a couple of fines that are very frequently levied against builders, and I think it's because of a lack of understanding. The first one that's highlighted here is implementing unapproved changes that affect the exterior appearance of a house or lot. Many things change in the course of construction. Sometimes the excavation doesn't go exactly as planned. There's more rock than you had anticipated, and the slope of the driveway has to change. If you find that out and you need to make a decision about making that change, you need to bring that back to the committee. If you leave it until the final inspection, this fine then comes into play because you have implemented a change to your original design, right? And you haven't asked the committee about it or informed them of it. Another frequent fine that is levied against builders is blocking the road without notice. Seton Valley's roads are very challenging in some areas, and sometimes even getting a delivery can end up blocking a road. When that happens, every neighbor and everyone who uses that road as a shortcut to get out of the gate and into Bellingham gets on the phone and is very unhappy that there was no notice given that the road was blocked. Later in the presentation, we'll talk about how to give notice, but please call us up and let us know if something like that's going to happen. We know things can change, but try to plan ahead. the first time a builder calls us and tries to ask for a road closure without the appropriate notice, we'll try to accommodate them. But by the third or fourth time that they're asking for that accommodation, we're a little less forgiving. And you can easily see why. The third row on this list that has been highlighted is failure to provide flaggers. Okay, a flagger is not the most junior guy on your crew who happened to be there and you can put him in the road to wave people over. Flagger is a certified flagger with a certified sign, not something you Xeroxed that morning. It's a requirement. And yes, it can be expensive. This slide shows you what the new permit and extension timeline looks like. I told you earlier in the presentation that there was one change that was approved by the board to be implemented and effective immediately, and this is it. It used to be at Sudden Valley that when you applied for your new construction approval, that came with 9 months of building time. The first extension started in month 10 and took you out to 12 months. It was a 3-month free extension so that for the $3,500 permit fee or application fee, you got 12 months to build the house. After that, there was a second extension that could be 6 months or could be set to match your Whatcom County permit. So it could be less than 6 months or could be a little more than 6 months. And that second extension cost $100, but you had to remember to apply for it. The third extension in the old way was also 6 months or matching your Whatcom County permit timing. And that third extension cost as much as $5,000. Okay, so that was the old way. Everybody found that confusing because the first extension was free and it felt like it wasn't a big deal. We've now made it a little bit clearer. Your original application will get you a 12-month permit, and that comes along with the application fee of $7,000. So you get 12 months under the original permit. The first extension is up to 6 months based on what you're requesting. Perhaps you're almost done and you only need a couple of months. You can ask the committee for that. It's still $5,000, but it's up to 6 months. The second extension is also up to 6 months. It costs $10,000. The third extension is for a year, and it's called a final extension. And that extension is for $20,000. Now, let me tell you a little bit of the logic behind this, because these are big numbers. The logic behind this is that since we had guidelines for the ACC, the expectation has been that new construction should be completed within 12 months. In fact, there is a fine on our books of $1,000, and that's $2016 at least. That fine is applied if you go over 9 months. Okay, so from the very beginning, Sudden Valley has been serious about timelines. Now, COVID happened and no one knew what was going on or how things were going to be affected. And it was difficult for the association to monitor for compliance in these areas. And so timelines kind of fell by the wayside. But it is the expectation of the HOA and of all our members that construction be completed within 12 months. We understand that stuff happens. And so we can allow for extensions that get you up to 3 years, but they are costly. This is the language. It will be posted to the website in the updated AC policies manual tomorrow. But here it is documented for you all tonight. And basically it just says what was in the chart. Your first 12 months is free. You can have an extension for another 6, an extension for another 6, and a final extension for another year. I'd like to go over a couple of the other common violations, just so you're forewarned. The first one is for parking. The rules say that you may not park on the roadside. Contractors must park on the job site. That counts even if you're behind the fog line, okay? If you have a lot of people working on a particular day because you have, extra subcontractors coming in, or there's something big happening, you need a lot of hands on deck, it may be necessary to park vehicles elsewhere and carpool to the job site. Now, it also goes on to say that if you're not parking on site, and some of the sites being built right now don't allow for that because they're too steep or the house is too big and there's no space, you need to work with staff to get permission to park somewhere else. And that could be the roadside, but you need permission from staff to do that. So please communicate with us. We want you to have access to your building site so you get it done in 12 months. But we also need to understand where you're going to be parking and let security know that. I'd also like to point out that if you are allowed to park in the right of way, you may have to do restoration after the job is over. If soil was disturbed or vegetation was destroyed, that would have to be restored. Clean sites. Security drives by every active building site every single day, and they send pictures when the site appears to be out of order. So we've had a couple of instances where there were very large garbage piles left, the ends that you cut off a siding or whatever that were just thrown down. They weren't tarped. And that might be okay for a day, but if it's there for more than a couple of days, there's the potential to be fined. If you do have debris piles, please tarp them and get them out of there as soon as you can. It is required that you secure all equipment, and usually that's a no-brainer because nobody wants their expensive tools to be stolen. But people routinely leave out buckets, tarps, and other things that aren't, that expensive. Well, they also are light enough to be blown. And when debris starts blowing onto the neighboring properties, that quickly gets everyone's attention. If you do have building supplies on site, they should also be neatly stacked and tarped so that we know what they are, and we don't tell you have a messy site, basically. Work hours, it's another popular one. The summer seasonal schedule, which starts May 1st, I guess that's prep, and runs through October 30th, is Monday through Friday, 8 to 7, with the exception of concrete work, and Saturday, 8 to 6. But it's important to know that you can work outside of those hours as long as what you're doing doesn't cause noise. So if you're in there measuring or doing whatever quiet building things you need to do, you can do that at any time of the day or night. But if you're creating noise or you have 15 high-watt spotlights turned on, that's going to get the attention of neighbors. And then there's going to be a complaint that you're working outside of hours. Now, I mentioned concrete work. We understand that it's hard to schedule a concrete delivery. And so, although we ask that you try and schedule it within the normal working hours, if that is not possible, there are exceptions. And in the busy season, which is here May 1st through October 30th, Monday through Friday, you can start mobilizing at 6:30 to start pouring at 7. But you have to call and let us know that that's what's happening. And you should already be notifying us because you're probably going to have a road closure. I call these the good neighbor violations. Of course, if you have experienced this violation, it's not being very neighborly. Exterior lighting. Our rules say that it must be downward directed, but we go further than that and say that no lights should be allowed to shine directly into the windows of another property. Many times when a construction project gets to the point where the roof is on and the electricity's on and there are lights inside, contractors like to leave those lights on overnight because it's a deterrent to theft. That's their feeling, we've been told. Unfortunately, if those lights are shining directly into neighboring properties, it's not possible. You can't leave them on. That's a violation. And the other one that's here up on the slide is about noise. Now, we already talked a little bit about noise in terms of understanding what the working hours are, but there's also noise in terms of just being a good neighbor. And this rule applies to every single person, not just builders. If there's obnoxious or disruptive noise coming from the property, that can be a complaint in and of itself. So please don't play music that can be heard beyond the boundaries of the property. Get yourself earbuds if you need to hear the music or your workers do. The only noise that is acceptable during working hours is construction noise. That's it. So if your crew is there playing the radio and getting into it, that is something that the neighbors can and will complain about, and we've had many instances of that. So we're going to transition into talking about more of the nuts and bolts, and then at the end we will leave a lot of time for questions. So hopefully you're remembering them all. Thanks.
All right. Okay. So we're going to talk about kind of starting from the beginning, how to submit a new construction to Sudden Valley, and talk about some timelines. So the new construction application, you can find it online. It needs to be, so we'll schedule a meeting with me. We'll go into more of that detail in a moment. But the deadline for this is 10 working days before an ACC meeting. That gives us, and it kind of gives us barely enough time to do our review and then get comments back to the builder, and then also leave some time for revisions before we put it on the agenda for the next ACC meeting. So this 10 working days is a minimum. Sometimes we get busy and you might be on the following ACC meeting if we have a lot of submittals in the queue. But this is spelled out in the policies, 10 working days. So if you call to try to get a meeting the same week of the ACC or the Thursday before, which is part of the next part on the other forms, we've passed that deadline already, and you'll have to be making on the next one.
Any of the other forms that you need to turn in, like a variance form or a construction change request, need to be in noon on the Thursday before the meeting. And I'm not looking at anyone in particular who likes to send his at noon, but it's not helpful to send it at noon. It would be better at 11:30. Okay, so which forms are we going to use for what? One thing that there's been a lot of confusion about is exterior alteration request forms. Those are not for builders. Those are for homeowners. Do not use that form, please, or a fence request or a tree request. They are not builder forms. The forms you're going to use are the new construction checklist, a variance request, a REPA form, new construction change application, ACC inspection request form, or an extension and reapproval request. And Joel will go into some of those with you. You can find them under commonly requested forms on the main webpage. I circled it there for you. It's a tab. ACC meeting times are the first and third Thursday of each month. That first meeting is at 9 a.m. on Zoom. The second one is in the barn at 6 p.m., this area where we are. And we want you there. We want you to come. We encourage you to be there. We're doing something new this year with builders. Whatever is going to be submitted to the ACC will be sent to you in its exact format that they will see via email prior to the meeting. So you'll see what they'll see. And you all have received decision letters, and they go out. I try to get them out as quickly as possible to builders. Up to 10 days sometimes it takes if we're super busy. They are sent only via email. We don't mail them. And if you ever want a copy, a hard copy, I'm happy to provide it because it will be in your construction file.
All right. So there's always questions about the number of meetings you have to get through to get your new construction approved. So there are 2 meetings that at least that take place in the admin building. 2 of those meetings are with me or the architectural control inspector. One of those meetings is with the ACC. So the first meeting we go on is a submittal meeting. I recommend reaching out via email, but this does have to be a scheduled time to bring in your documents. So once you have your new construction application completed and you've checked all the boxes on that form, schedule a meeting. We'll decide on a time. You come in here and we will go through this plan review checklist and to deem your application complete. Not all the boxes may apply to you. For example, projects may not have a variance, they may not have mitigation, or you may not be using the Wilson Stormwater workbook, so you might not need to pay that Wilson Stormwater fee. But Sudden Valley cannot accept your application until we can check all these other boxes and until your application fee is paid. So after we have accepted the application, we've had time for review, revisions. We go on an ACC meeting, and after you've obtained that ACC approval, you will receive a letter from admin saying your project has been approved, and it will detail some next steps. Those next steps, the second meeting we have in the office is our pre-construction compliance review meeting. So, during this meeting, we'll go through some of the rules about building in Sudden Valley. We'll verify things like your general contractor license, bond information, proof of insurance. And it's a good time to ask questions as well. One of the requirements also is to provide a copy of the Whatcom County reviewed, stamped, and approved plan set. I know oftentimes when you are submitting to Sudden Valley, this has not yet gone through the county review. So they are requesting now that we have a copy of what's been approved by the county. And then also a copy of the Whatcom County issued building permit. Also during this pre-construction meeting, this is when we accept the refundable completion deposit. And so we'll sit down together, we'll review some of the rules. This is also a good time to ask questions about those rules. And we will submit the revocable encroachment permit application, the REPA, to be reviewed and approved by the SVCA maintenance supervisor, currently Mike Brock. We recommend scheduling the pre-construction meeting at least 2 weeks before the start of construction to be on the safe side. The REPA does need to be reviewed and approved by Mike before construction can begin. And there are some documents that we package up with that REPA. Here's what the REPA currently looks like. This is the Sudden Valley issued building permit. It regulates all the work that can be done in the right-of-way, how utilities can be connected, road cuts and patches are done, culvert installs, hard surface trenches. Let's see, so there's some boxes on the bottom here that we will go through: proof of bond, license number, deposit. At this time, the plans have been submitted and checked, and you've paid your permit fee, and then you'll give us a notification of your start date. So the contractor fills out the top part. We go through those check boxes on the bottom during our meeting. Oh, yeah. Sorry. And then we take all those, all these things and put it together with the REPA, and we send it off for Mike Brock with his approval. So mostly looking for is what type of work is going to be performed in the Sudden Valley right away. Where are the utility connections going to go? Is your building permit issued? And what's the general site plan? So Lake Whatcom Water Sewer District does provide these connection maps. I think they believe it, or I believe they issue them when they give you your water sewer availability. So we are going to be asking for those. And then we've been asking that those same utility connections be shown accurately on your site plan. So we take these things up, we attach them to the permit, and we send them to Mike for his approval. I do recommend, maybe 2 weeks to schedule this meeting because it may take Mike some time to approve it. He may have questions. There might be some more information that needs to happen before he's ready to approve the REPA. So as the inspector, I can't, if changes happen during the course of construction and we show up on a final and things are changed, like lights or retaining walls are built or unbuilt, if things are different than what was approved in your plan set, then you have to get that approval, your construction change request, through the ACC. So we would come out during a final or another inspection, and then you have to now jump through that hoop. Right, it adds maybe a 3-week delay until you can get that ACC approval. I cannot approve things on site. The committee is in charge of exterior changes. So save yourself time delays, potential fines, having to go back and rework. You submit those construction change requests ahead of time before the inspection happens, and then it's going to add time to your project.
Before you do the work.
Yeah. Yes. Before you do the work.
Hey, road closures, one of my favorite subjects. Contrary to what was said earlier, we do want an email request for road closures whenever possible. I know sometimes you're out there and you're like, I'm going to forget it. So I'm going to call you right now and I'm going to just email you back and say, here's what I heard. Is this right? And you'll have to still email me and verify that, please. So I'm looking for the date, the time of day that you're going to close the road. And I always tell people, overestimate. If you're having a delivery and you think it's only going to be 45 minutes, tell me an hour and a half, whatever. Better to overstate than to understate. You need to let me know if it's a full or partial closure, what type of work is being done, and if possible, who the subcontractor is. So if I get a call from somebody, they're doing something down here, they got the road closed and I don't know what they're doing and blah, 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 because you didn't tell anybody out there. At least then we can say, don't worry about it. It's just them delivering trusses. It's fine, blah, blah. So the REPA says that you have to give us 3 working days notice. It's required by the permit from Sudden Valley. Fridays are a big no for a road closure. You'll get an acknowledgement email, like I said, from me. Please review it for errors. I had one where I did make a mistake and the builder got back to me and said, you got the wrong times on here. And because I do make mistakes for sure. If the road isn't going to be closed or something changes about the delivery or what's going on, please let us know because I'm updating the road closure page of our website. And whenever possible, be a good neighbor and alert your neighbors. Of course, with concrete, you have to. And are we going to talk about that, Joel? The concrete in particular? That's a 48-hour notice in writing to the neighbors that are next to you and across the street, anything around you. You have to notify them in writing, and that there are little forms that are available on the website that you can use to do that.
All right. Okay. So once you've got your project approved by ACC and we've had our compliance review meeting, your REPA has been sent to Mike Brock. Mike Brock has approved your REPA. Then you can start your construction, and there are 4 inspections which need to be done. The first one is the erosion control. It's called erosion control, but it also includes tree fencing. You need to have this inspection complete before any soil disturbance. Before stump removal, before excavation. So you can fell your trees, then set up your silt fence and tree protection. Currently, the tree protection is measured at the drip line. You can see some examples down here on the bottom. After that inspection's been done and passed, then you can start with your stump removal and it says stump excavation, but also your general excavation. The second inspection is for setbacks. You need to complete your setback inspection before pouring concrete. And what my understanding is that when the county comes out, their first inspection is with their setbacks, but they also, what I've been told is they also schedule their silt fence inspection or their erosion control at this same time. So one thing that Sudden Valley is different is they want to see and make sure that the silt fence is in place before any excavation has occurred. So a common mistake is that the excavation is performed, the forms for the footings are set up, and then the erosion control and the setback inspection are called for, but it's too late for the erosion control. So make sure for this inspection, this has to be done before you pour any concrete. So what we're looking for in this inspection is have your form set and then string out the lot line so that we can pull a measurement from. Third one is the driveway. Again, this inspection needs to be completed before pouring your concrete. When forms are set, what we're looking for is the details that are in Appendix A. We'll be measuring the slope percent, we'll be measuring the width, so 12 to 20 feet, well, 12 minimum, 20 maximum. Make sure the road is saw cut. We're looking for the curvatures. So there's a 10 to 15 radius of curvature from the driveway to the road edge. We're looking for a swale or a strip drain in place. The swales, those can be hand troweled. But we need to make sure, if you have a driveway that is sloping to the road, you need to make sure you install that swale at the end. And then we're also looking for the culvert install. Make sure that the depth of burial is minimum 12 inches and it's made of double wall ABS. There's a lot on the driveway inspection. And then the final. So they're all exterior elements. I'm always happy to provide this list ahead of time so you know what we're coming out to inspect for, so that you can get it one and done and we don't have to come back. Probably the 3 most common things that get missed are having their property corners exposed, so the rebar with a yellow cap on it. We need to observe those. If they are destroyed or obliterated during the course of construction, they do need to be reestablished by a surveyor. Exterior lights change all the time, right? It's okay, it happens all the time, but it usually does result in a 2-week delay to get it approved on the ACC. So again, that goes back to get your construction change request approved before you make that change, or at least before you get onto the final. And then having jute mat missing on steep slopes. So we'll find you've got your finished mulch down, you've got your planting in place, but there's slopes that are 50% or more, and you have to scrape off your bark or mulch, pin some jute mat, and then put it all back on, right? So it's an extra step. How to request the inspection. So your form gets submitted electronically. So this looks pretty similar to the county form. Property address, name and contact, select a requested date of inspection. Sudden Valley does require at least 24-hour advance notice for each inspection. Please plan ahead. If it's Tuesday at 1 in the afternoon and you submit your inspection request for the forms for your driveway and you want me to come out at 4 or 5 p.m., I might not be able to make it out there. So don't schedule your concrete trucks for the morning until we've agreed upon a time to make it out. So you have to give enough, at least 24 hours advance notice for that inspection. And you'll also find this in the commonly requested forms page. It's circled right there, the ACC inspection request form. When the form is submitted, it sends me an email. So we see exactly, get to see all those details. It's instant. And so we get those alerts. Here it is all on one page. Erosion control, setbacks, driveway final. There's only 4 inspections. There is no more inspection for the stormwater system.
I'll go over this one. After Joel completes the final inspection, he goes through his paperwork and fills out a request to return your deposit. We ask that you allow 2 to 3 weeks for processing. After Joel fills it out, it comes to me. I ask him all sorts of questions about the build. If there have been any fines issued, this is a time where we review those. And then I sign off on it and it goes to accounting. Accounting only runs checks 1 day a week. So if we've missed that deadline, it might take till the next check run in the following week. And that's how the 2 to 3 weeks piles up. If there's a pressing need, you can let Joel know that and we can prioritize it. By default, the checks will be mailed to you. So if you would prefer to pick it up to save that extra 2 days of transit time, let us know in advance and we can hold it and call you when it's ready. All right, we talked for a long time, so hopefully it made sense. Yeah, I did. Are there any questions? And we have about 9 or 10 people online, as well as the folks that are here in the room. So if you do have a question, we ask that you come up to the mic so that everyone can hear the questions. We have a question from online. Brandon is asking, does in writing for concrete mean via mail or email? So Brandon, can you clarify, does that mean if you're scheduling a concrete pour? Yes. So that's for Diane.
Email.
Yeah, all road closures need to be verified in email. So it's kind of pointless to call because like Diane said, she's just going to email you back and say, okay, please verify that these are the right the right.
Oh, for the neighbors, he's clarifying.
Oh,
That's an in writing thing. And during our compliance review meeting, I'll usually provide a copy. There's some notices that you can post on the doors of neighbors. It details the dates and times for the anticipated concrete pour. And it gives you a 3 to 5 day window for pouring.
are there other questions?
So my name's Preston Knudsen, and I'm going to be building 2 houses out in Sun Valley. And
I'm sorry, Preston. To be registered on the mic, you have to literally have it.
great, I'll get a little closer.
You're too tall.
So for starters, on the permits, so when exactly did these changes take place? What was the official date?
April 12th.
Because I purchased or made deposits for 2 permits and the fees were 4,000. So then now I see that they've moved up to 7,000. Do I owe another 3,000?
No. A fee is assessed on the day it's paid.
Okay. So that brings me to another question. So if the fees are paid on the 12th and then I'm essentially grandfathered into those current fees and I guess permit structure, when it comes to the deposit, now am I required to meet the new deposit requirements of 20,000 or am I under the old rules of 10,000?
Again, the fee is effective on the date that you're paying it.
Okay.
So as you'll be paying the deposit after the increase was approved, you will be required to pay the larger amount.
Okay. Because that's a little bit different than most permitting departments or municipalities where when a rule is changed, typically if you've made a deposit and submitted an application, all of the rules moving forward, even any changes that happen after that, are subject to the old rules, which is in the benefit of the applicant because they may not be prepared for any changes that come down the line as far as finances go. Because I can see it being somewhat of an onerous burden on some people who weren't anticipating that change, where they had already submitted their permits, made their fees, paid their fees, gotten financing, which is very common for a certain amount of money. And then as you change the rules down the line, now they're subject to some other potential costs.
Right. So we looked at that issue quite closely and determined that if a builder or an owner, depending on who had applied or submitted the application for new construction, if you received a letter documenting it and that cited an amount and for the deposit, that would be honored. So I think there were like 4 properties sort of on the cusp of all of this that they had meetings before the changes and now they're actually having their meetings after the changes. And so we identified those previously when we were looking at this. So you may or may not fall into that. I don't know. I would have to look at the specifics of your case.
Okay, because there is a 90-day maximum that you can submit your application that you need to draw your permit, right? So at some point, that wouldn't necessarily or make sense.
Well,
Otherwise, you'd be resubmitting.
Well, but you can have the meeting and then set the start date, right? So those are 2 separate things. But if you come up afterwards and tell me your property addresses, I can look it up. I don't know off the top of my head.
Because Joel, do you know off the top of your head when we submitted? I think we submitted before.
Yeah, we have dates. Yeah, you did submit, I think in early April. So you paid the 3,500, and then the change was made for the fee and the deposit.
But at that time, we were anticipating that the deposit would be the 10,000 because that was what was on the website under the current regulations. I mean, we never received a letter. I don't know why you'd ever send a letter out say, here's what the website states. I mean,
no, it depends on when the approval was granted. So that was our trigger. But like I said, we can definitely look up the specifics and let you know and have that conversation.
I'm just kind of curious about the timing of it all. But I completely understand why you're doing it and the fact that I think a lot of builders were using it, were just writing it off as a cost of construction, and doing whatever they wanted. So I get the increase, but I don't necessarily appreciate how the timing worked out. But
yeah, one of the complexities of working in an HOA is that I literally have no flexibility. I'm the agent of the board of directors, and when they make a decision in a meeting, that's the decision. Like regardless of all the consequences or circumstances that we haven't thought of up front. And we're not a government. We don't have professional parliamentarians sitting around telling us how to write this memo or how to write that resolution. We don't have the resources of Whatcom County. We don't have state or federal funding. We just have the dues that homeowners pay, and we do our best. But we don't always check every single one of the boxes. So it becomes complicated because people think I can waive, and I can't. I cannot waive a fee. I cannot waive a fine. Once it's levied, it is what it is.
And probably none of these people have ever applied for a building permit, so they don't understand the processes of it or how changes to the requirements are in line. So That's so anyways, I would be interested in looking into that further. But then I have a question for you, Joel, on the revocable encroachment permit.
Mhm.
You said that it has to you need the county plans to be able to submit it to Mr. Brock, who before he could issue the revocable encroachment permit. However, those permits aren't getting issued until the last day of May or the first day of June. So that would theoretically put the construction for everybody's project back 2 weeks, the middle of June.
So if you're anticipating like a June 3rd, I guess, start date or June 1st, I'm sending those REPAs to Mike Brock, like preliminary, like with everything except for your county issued building permit, so he can get his eyes on it ahead of time. So I've already sent him a few of them.
So what are the chances of him? Because
Yeah.
as soon as my permits are ready at the county, as soon as I can go pick those up, I intend to head straight to your office.
Yeah. So
So
I'll
what are the chances of Mr. Brock getting those permits and then reviewing them and submitting the revocable encroachment?
So we could probably, he'd probably add some language in there that is approved pending receipt of your Whatcom County issued permit.
Okay.
So as soon as we get that,
Yep.
then you're approved to start. Yeah.
And I don't mean to hold your feet to the fire to every word that you said. I just have a plan.
Right.
And when, like your coworker said, there's so many details here. How can you keep track of them all? Right. So, those were my biggest questions, but then on some minor points, as far as the notifications go for concrete, I mean, there's multiple inspections and sometimes concrete's on will call. Can you just open up a whole week? You said 5 days you can allow. Just say, I'm going to be pouring concrete between Monday and Friday, or not Friday or Thursday, and then just stay out of trouble in that regard. So, same with closing the road. Say, expect the road to be closed for the maximum number of days. I mean, it's
I've never had anyone do it for 5 days, but definitely for 3.
window. Okay.
Yeah.
And then as far as the road closure and flagging goes, does flagging, is that required on a partial road closure?
Yes.
So even if one lane is still open?
Yeah, that's what the
requires-
flagger would get you around the
Yep.
partial closure.
So I'm building 2 houses on dead end streets, one of them directly at the end, which does that require flagging?
Probably not. Right.
How about 3 houses down? There's 3 houses below me. Literally, these are
Yeah.
very specific scenarios.
Yeah, talk to your neighbor.
I'm not being sarcastic.
No,
These
yeah.
are real.
Yeah.
I mean, because you guys threw some pretty big numbers up there for fines.
Right.
So what's going to happen is people need to
Mhm.
cross every T and dot every I,
Right.
notify everybody under the sun,
Yep.
and make sure all of your language is very clear in very unclear scenarios.
I'd get to know those 3 people at the end of that street.
Yeah.
And just explain, here's the deal. We're going to be closing the road sometimes. Do I need to tell you what hours, it's going to be?
And at the pre-construction meeting, can we get approval, or can I get approval to park on the shoulder? Because in the very beginning of a job, there is no driveway, there is no off-site parking, but people need to be able to have access to their equipment and tools in order to cut trees down and then to drop equipment.
Yes, you can request that
Okay,
right at the beginning.
right at the beginning. Okay. And then as far as the cleanliness of the site and adequate containers for garbage, I own a trailer that I use as a garbage trailer. Is that okay to have parked on the site to put garbage in?
Is it going to be overflowing or is it enclosed?
Oh, it has an open top.
Is it going to be piled high with junk falling over the sides?
It'll be fully contained.
Then it's fine.
Okay. And
Just
then
throw a
how
tarp
about,
over it.
I know excavators were a problem for many years as far as leaving them on site.
Yeah, there's a specific time they're allowed to be on site. It's in the policies.
ACC. Okay, because I also own an excavator that's used for handling material. It can have forks attached. Is there a specific time for that for material handling equipment? I mean, we can start classifying this stuff. I mean, so it takes forks, can move sheets, lumber, second
Yeah.
floor can be used to crane beams, set.
Why don't you take a look at the policy in the ACC booklet, the
Yes.
ACC policies booklet, and if you anticipate that you would need that on site longer than is allowed, then you could ask Joel to request an extension.
Okay, that sounds good. And then I think that's all I can think of right off the top of my head. But the very most important thing is that we can get the revocable encroachment permit on the day that I would like to withdraw or draw the permit from Sudden Valley. If that sounds reasonable, then
Meeting though.
so good.
Yeah. Reach out, schedule our compliance review meeting. So we can do that, ahead of time.
I'm already on
Yeah.
the books, right?
Are you?
I think so. I hope so.
Okay. We'll find out.
All right.
It was set for June 3rd.
Does anyone else?
Oh, okay. Are we? Okay.
Does anyone
that's
else have questions?
Thank you for your time.
Step up. This one, yeah. I have Pat Fisher's question, but sure.
I think this is my only question regarding fines. Will builders be able to request sort of an ongoing, like when we get let's say we get in first 2 months, 3 months or whatever, can we request like, hey, where are we at on fines? Is that appropriate?
So we've set up our process so that you'll be notified via a letter when the fine is assessed.
Oh, great.
No more of this, wait till the end and tally it all up.
Good.
Because again, the purpose is to encourage people to follow the rules. And if you don't fine anyone until the end, they don't even know they've broken the rule. So yes, we will be letting you know as the fines occur. Now, again, we're a very small staff and there are many active building sites. So there may be some delay, but it won't be months and months.
Great.
Okay.
It'll be due. It'll be due.
The downside to that is the regulations are clear that the fine assessed has to be paid.
Oh, within what?
Right.
time
30
frame?
days.
30 days. So
Yes. So pros and cons.
yeah, exactly.
And you mentioned we can appeal.
Hmm?
Okay, great.
Yes. And there's an appeals process posted on the website. Just type in the search bar appeals and then you'll get it.
Okay,
It's also in the letter.
great.
Okay. So we have a question from two questions from our online folks. Pat Fisher asks, at Lake Ridge Condos, we are designing a major renovation of the envelope of all buildings. Do we need a separate discussion to understand the process that ACC will require? So, Pat, we reached out via email to let you know that the ACC would review and your proposals for those exterior changes. And I believe we're in the process of requesting a meeting with you to discuss how best to manage it because the condos themselves have a different set of policies that govern changes than a single family dwelling. So that's, and Daniel, did you want to add anything to that? Okay. So thank you for raising that, Pat. And if you don't know when the meeting is or you haven't given your availability to Diane, just call her at the Welcome Center. And that number is 360-734-6430.
Extension 223.
Awesome. I can never remember those. Hans Kraus has an online question. Whatcom County will not issue permit until June 1st, according to the permit approval letter. Please explain steps and approvals required by SVCA and how soon tree cutting can begin under that scenario.
Hi, Hans. I think we actually have our our compliance review pre-construction meeting tomorrow. We'll do that meeting. We'll send actually, I think I already have Mike Brock review the REPA for this property and to get it under a preliminary review so that when your permit is issued by the county, hopefully the REPA will be pending approval based on receipt of the Whatcom County issued permit. And you should be able, and upon receipt of that, you should be able to start your cutting down trees on that same day.
Any other questions from online or from folks in the room? Sure, John, come on up.
I just like clarification on return of the deposit and notification. Does the builder get any notification that he's completed and he can receive his check, or some note about you have to apply in writing?
I think that policy does say that, yeah, your deposit return needs to be requested in writing, and that can just be an email.
But how does the builder know that he
Usually
available?
well, usually, during our on-site final inspection, there's some communication with the builder on site. If there's things that need to be reworked, we'll call those out. If a reinspection needs to happen again, we'll come out and reinspect. But usually by the time of there's usually just ongoing communication, either email or text or in person, that everything's done here, looks good. I can sign off on your file's done.
Okay.
And then you would request in writing to Joel.
Okay.
An email to Joel is what starts that.
When you say it's all done, your inspection's done, then that's the signal to the builder that he can request his deposit.
Yes.
Good question.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
For being
Hi.
here. So my
To get right up, Mike.
better.
Right.
Eat it.
I'm
You
back.
gotta eat it.
So my biggest thing is the process moving forward this summer throughout the build timing. Here's the issues that I have, and I'm dealing with. Some because I've been adjusting from the way things were done to the way things are now, and so I'm trying to catch up and go along with what this year is going to be. But we have issues sometimes where we start excavating, we run into things. There's a tree. We are under pressure to get it done because of county, but then there's 2-3 weeks we got to wait for Sun Valley approval. A tree here, this, that. What do we do? Because sometimes we can't do the work. We can't wait. If we wait for Sun Valley approval, we're getting into big fines here. Then there's a similar question issue, and I have this in one of my homes. I've had temporary final for 4 months. County's requiring me to submit something from Sun Valley. Sun Valley's requiring me to submit something from county. And I'm in this where I can't or couldn't. And then I have situations where I email Mike, Joe. I have 10, 15 different times where I don't get a response at all. But then there's an issue where we're on site. Well, this should have been done the right way. This was a while ago. I was forced to do something by county. I didn't have enough time to get all the proper approvals. Back then it was done differently. So there's stuff like this where I have a lot of these things, and I'm not blaming anybody. Some of it's my fault, some of it the way it was done. But moving forward, if we are excavating, all these 2-week, 3-week, 4-week delays, we start excavating middle of summer, we got 2 months to backfill, we run into an issue. And it's one day after ACC deadline to submit. Is there a process to get ACC approval, HOA, some kind of approval so that we can have enough time to complete so that we don't run into issues with weather and Whatcom County?
Yes, there is a process, Vitaly. The process is to send an email to Diane, who is the ACC admin right now, and she will manage your issue to resolution. That means that she will get the right people on staff involved, and there will be a decision made. And then she will be the person that responds back to you regarding the decision and your next step. So you don't need to try and get me or try and get Mike Brock or anyone else. Just email Diane. That's how it works. There's always things that we can do. We had a situation a couple of months ago where someone called for an inspection, but Joel was ill. If we delayed until Joel was available, it would have impacted the building, the progress of building very negatively. So we got someone else to do the inspection. As soon as that situation was called out to us, we could circle the wagons and figure it out. Things do happen. And we do have a set schedule of meetings with the ACC, but we also have access to those folks, and we can sometimes get their involvement out of cycle, and certainly staff members can be made available without waiting an undue amount of time. But literally hundreds of requests come to me through email every single day about a range of topics. So for building issues, email Diane Bruno.
So Diane would be the,
ACCadmin@suddenvalley.com.
in the past, there have been a few years where there were more ACC meetings to allow, because every summer we're busy, we're short-staffed. We'll get to it when we get to it. Is there something in place this summer, or is everything as regular every first and third?
In the past, extra meetings were scheduled when the volume of requests exceeded what could be handled at the regular meetings. We don't have that situation right now. They've been doing very long meetings and getting everything in. But if we get so many requests that the agenda becomes unmanageable, then of course we will go to the chair and ask if we can schedule some additional meetings.
But we're not. Nothing said for this summer.
We're not at that point right now, no.
Last question. We have temporary final from county. Is that enough? And we have Sun Valley, everything approved for Sun Valley final, I guess. Is that okay enough? Is that enough for us to start moving in? I think over the last few years, I've asked this question 20 times.
The rules say you can't move in until the final inspection is complete.
Yeah, well, if I have Sun Valley final for all the exterior and all the Sun Valley stuff, and then I have county temporary final, which states you can move in, is that enough?
So technically, Sudden Valley's final is not completed until we receive final occupancy permit. So once in a while, county will come out and issue a temporary occupancy that says, yeah, you can move in and live in this house. It's usually maybe pending one other inspection. Maybe it's the stormwater. We don't know.
It's very common.
Yeah.
Like I have a house that I've had temporary final for 4 or 5 months. And they clearly said you can move in, all the safety stuff. The house is good. It's just these retaining walls. And when the house been furnished for 4 months, I'm waiting and I can't get an answer. I can't do anything. It's just sitting there. Although the house itself, even the inspector courtesy, like, dude, go ahead, move in.
The answer is clear. The answer is no, because our final inspection is contingent on having the certificate of occupancy, and a temporary certificate doesn't satisfy that. So in order to get you an exception, I would need to know the very specific details of that case. I'm saying this for Diane to hear, so that I could bring it to the board of directors or the executive committee for an approved exception. That's the only way that would work.
Is it 18 Sudden Valley?
That's one of them. And so I guess that's the answer I'm looking for. What is the process to get an exception? Because I've been told some people got it, some don't. What about me? I don't know. What is the process? Would it be again, Diane?
I'll get you to the right place if I know about it. Told you that in the office.
Emailing you then.
Awesome. All right. Thanks. Any other questions? How about our online participants? Excellent. Well, I thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope this information was helpful. We will post this recording, and I know our view here was sort of obscured by this weird Zoom thing on the Zoom menu on the bottom, but the recording didn't have it on. So hopefully that'll be more clear for people. And if you do have questions, give us a call. Thank you.